Welcome back on this Wednesday. We are continuing with Luke chapter 2, picking up with verse 12. And we are just reading through verse 16 today. While Jesus, was in one of the cities, there was a man full of leprosy. And when he saw Jesus, he fell on his face and begged him, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, "I will be clean." And immediately the leprosy left him, and he charged him to tell no one, but to go and show yourself to the priest and make an offering for your cleansing, as Moses commanded, for a proof to them. But now even more the report went out about him, and great crowds gathered to hear him and to be healed of their infirmities. But he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. Again, one of those transitionary phrases at the beginning, while he was in one of the cities, not saying, and then he was in another city, but wow. So again, read these stories, definitely things that happen. The order doesn't really matter. They might be a little bit different. It's not saying that they weren't, but it doesn't give that tendency. Again, they're working on fulfilling and showing Jesus and who he is. And this is an important one for that. He runs across a man with leprosy. Now, leprosy was one of many skin diseases. It may or may not be contagious. It may or may not have been what we now know as leprosy. It could have been, but it covered all other types of skin diseases where they might have a blemish or a spot or an infection. And in order to protect the rest of the people from that, they would be quarantined because, again, they didn't have antibiotics to clear up the infections, and an infection could spread to others. So they needed to be quarantined, as shown in Leviticus 13. And they were also considered unclean. As part of this uncleanness, they were unable to be touched by other people, or they would be unclean, and there would be a threat of also becoming unclean as well, right? And they wouldn't be able to go into the temple. If they were able to be healed of it somehow, if the infection ran its course and they didn't have it anymore, there was process they would need to go through. They would need to wash themselves and show themselves to the priest to be declared clean. Now, as the leper comes up, he shows this great statement of faith. "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." Moving from unclean to clean. Jesus, of course, can, and he will, and he does. But the response is amazing. He doesn't speak that word of healing. He touches him. He touches the unclean person, which would make him unclean. But instead, his cleanness, his holiness, takes over and cleanses the man with leprosy. Jesus tells him to say nothing to no one, to show himself as a temple, to fulfill the law of Moses, right? Jesus was all about fulfilling those laws, but in doing so, he was showing that he himself is the fulfillment of all of those holiness, purity laws that are there. It says people then became to hear, the word spread about him. They wanted to hear him, and they brought people to be healed. Not just the healing aspect, but to hear the authority of his speaking, thinking back to chapter 4 when they talked about that. But he would withdraw and pray, connect with his Father, make sure he was seeking and doing the Father's will according to his human nature to do what God is calling him to do. Now, a couple things on this. Again, the purpose of this passage is to show again why Jesus came according to Isaiah 61 to free those who were being held captive again, because of the leprosy. They were captive. They couldn't go and be part of their normal lives. Jesus freed this man from that captivity in a great way. It also shows the holiness of Jesus, the cleanness, and in many ways, as we look at Jesus almost and his connection to the temple, his replacement of the temple was a place where only people who were clean were allowed to go, but Jesus gives this holiness, this cleanness to others, showing that all of those Old Testament purity, holiness laws really point to Jesus and how he would come to make those, all people who trust in him, clean in the eyes of the Lord. We'll see you again tomorrow. I hope you're having a great week.